A covenant is an agreement between two people that has dual obligations and must be honored by both parties. Marriage is one such agreement that was ordained by God. Is our understanding of marriage covenant in alignment to the original will of God? What then makes marriage different from any other kind of covenant? Stay tuned as Dr. Njeri Gachohi takes us through today's lesson on the marriage classroom.
Okay, welcome back to the marriage classroom, and this is our third lesson, and we've quite learned a lot. I hope you're also excited that you are learning. Sure. The same with me, and I believe even our viewers are also learning, and we are together in the class, even though you may be out there, but in the outside classroom, but we are learning together. So last time we learned about what? I almost told you, but I think it's important that we tell ourselves again. Yes, Philip, do I give somebody else as you?
Yes.
Okay, Winnie?
No, we learned the purpose of marriage, and there were 4 of them.
Okay.
Yes, so the first one was for companionship. The other one was for sexual pleasure.
Okay, now Philip has remembered. The other one?
Suitable helper.
Yes, for helping. And another one? Procreation.
Companionship.
Yeah, companionship. All of them together, and we thank God. Now I believe we are learning, and we said we are committing ourselves to fulfill that or those purposes in our marriage. So I believe we are procreating, we are giving ourselves companionship, we are helping one another, and I believe we are also enjoying the gift of God, the gift of sexual union. Okay? Yes. And God bless you. So today we learn something else as we have come to understand what God intended in marriage. Now, what do we have right now? And people may ask, do we have marriage as a covenant or a contract? So I want to say today's topic is understanding the marriage covenant. The marriage covenant and as I was looking at what a covenant simply means, or it means, you find some definitions that are saying simply, generally. I think someone just wants just to give us his idea. So one of them is simply that a covenant is an agreement. That was like the head. Another one says generally. Now, in general, this was simply generally, it is a binding or establishing a bond between two parties. But another one which gives it more form, that is for the what you call the open definition, that in legal and financial terminology, a covenant is a promise in an indenture, bond or pact or any other form of agreement that certain activities will or will not be carried out. In other words, it's literally a contract. And that's where my question came out from. Now, if it is literally a contract, is marriage a covenant or a contract? The way we know a contract or we know a marriage, is that how God intended it? A contract? Because the definition will tell us literally a contract. And I think that's what makes us to think about today. So what do you think, before we go now to maybe looking at what the Bible says and what maybe exactly a contract looks like, would you want to tell me, what's your opinion? Is it a contract or a covenant?
Okay.
Aston, yeah?
I would think a contract is one that has an easier exit clause. Whenever people are coming up with contracts, one of the key issues they include in the contract is that something they call a termination clause. That if this and this happens, we are released from the contract. On the contrary, I would say covenants are supposed to have some form of perpetuity. You don't easily come out of a covenant. A covenant will be more stronger than a contract. But based on the definitions you've given, literally the line is very thin. The line between, because at the end of the day, they're all supposed to bind two parties. Yeah, they're supposed to bind two parties. But how we understand contracts is something that you just write and you can say, with this and this, I can come out of this contract. But covenant inafaa iendelee, probably even for a lifetime.
Okay.
Yes.
So there seems to be like a contract seems to be like an exit. You have seen an exit door.
Yes. Yes.
That is one of the things that you make sure that there is.
Yes.
The exit, like the way we talk about the fire escape.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Something else?
And I think for me, covenant mostly, especially from the biblical definition, it binds parties and it's not supposed to be terminated. Whereas a contract is a legally binding agreement with the conditions on how, or with terms on how it can be terminated based on breach.
Okay.
Yeah, so covenant, it's not supposed to be terminated. But contract, it can be terminated. And there are specific ways of how you can terminate it.
Okay, I'm also getting something also. That a contract seems to be working within a limited time also. Because it can also come to two ways. It can come to an end in two ways. One, if there is a breach. Okay? That is where there is a fact that you failed to.
Yeah.
Okay? And I can cancel a contract. But then there is also the fact that it can also come to an end because there is a completion of the purpose of the contract. Let's say like we talk about a contract like the one who built this building. I believe there was a signed contract. So there were those that were abiding. Once it is complete and the person has taken over the building, what happens to the contractor? Or the one who was given the contract? He's released, isn't it? And you're released and there's nothing that will bind you again to the contract. Now, when we talk about the covenant, and we thinking about marriage, do we have an exit door? Is there a fire escape? And there was a question that last lesson, I don't know, in one of the things was like, if there was a case where one is not really doing getting the purposes fulfilled in a marriage, do we have an exit door?
No. Hata kama maybe kwamba mtu kama sio suitable helper vile ambao nilifikiria haina mlango wa kutokea. According kwamba hizo to the scriptures, the Bible, marriage covenant into marriage until death do your part. So maybe kutakuwa na kwamba some reason kwamba maybe mmoja wetu ni mdhaifu kwa side yake, responsibility zake timizi vizuri. Lakini kwamba kuna njia kumsaidia. Because ni msaidizi wangu, kuna njia kwamba kumsaidia kwamba kuelewa jinsi ambavyo inavyofanywa. Yes.
Asante.
Actually, during our last class discussion, during the last meeting, one of the things we discussed was that by virtue of God seeing that man needed a helper, it means that he also realized that he also had or may have had some faults that will require one to come and also assist you in them. The same thing also, that's why the other person was coming also as a suitable helper. And during that discussion, one of the illustrations that I think came out and I also remembered was that for me, when I actually got married, one of my greatest weakness or something that I could not do, I got married to a lawyer. I know lawyer, one of their favorite dishes is chicken. So, and I was expected to know how to slaughter chicken. But do you know, that is something that up to date I was not able to do. But I've had relatives and families where wives have been returned home or their marriages have been dissolved because the woman cannot cook. So the thing that we were actually advised is that my husband, now that he knows how to slaughter chicken, now it's upon him now to teach me or also assist me because we are they are suitable companions to assist each other where someone is not able to do it. So that maneno ya kuku na kutopika ugali na kuweka chumvi mingi isitufanye tu vunje ndoa zetu.
So there is an opportunity to learn.
Yes.
Maybe Aston can tell us exactly. Are you not getting one of the purposes now that somebody does not know how to cook a good chicken?
I must add, we've been married. I think this will be our 8th year. I started that class of how to slaughter chicken on around day 3 of our marriage. We are still in the class of how to catch the chicken. But because I'm not getting that purpose of eating chicken, I don't think it's a reason for me to run away from the marriage.
Yes.
We'll continue learning and learning and learning. Hopefully, one day she will learn the lesson on how to slaughter
and
chicken.
Sometimes I want to ask, is this the teacher who has a problem or the student? Because we say, if a learner never learned, the teacher never taught. So I'm wondering, are you really teaching well how to slaughter that chicken? Okay, George?
Picking up from what Philip had said, contract, in as much as is those, if you breach that contract, there is an exit, whatever. But in covenant, you find that God, when he's establishing this, there is forgiving, there is reconciliation, and the like. So it's supposed to last for a lifetime. And that's why he was saying, it's till death do us part.
Yes.
But now in a contract, you breached it, I have the right just to cancel it and terminate it. Okay. But in covenant, there is reconciliation and forgiving, and that can bring you, to stay together.
Lovely. Yes. Thank you. Now, brings us. Now, let's look at now exactly what is a contract. And maybe by looking at those unique things about contract, then we'll be able to differentiate it from a covenant. So, a contract is evident when someone, let's say this. A contract is an agreement, but it can be invalid when one of the involved parties violates it. Like what you were saying. We signed a contract. One of us violates in the fact that you don't fulfill your part, I can cancel it. And that's the end of it. We can dissolve it. And once it is dissolved, then you realize that either there are those clauses that we have put, you get this, I get this. And it's like, we say this, do this for me as I do this for you. It is my part and your part. If neither does, then, or either of us does not do it, then that ends it. Okay, so those contracts are those agreements enforced also by law. Okay? And when we are talking about some of the critical things about contract is that, and they must have an offer, and that offer must be accepted. You see, if I'm giving you an offer to construct for me a building, you look at what I've offered you, and you either accept it or you don't. Okay? If you don't accept, I can't force you. And once you accept it, it's binding. Okay? So there is the offer that is given and the offer that has to be accepted. Then it has variable consideration. That means the parties are exchanging something that is equally variable or meaningful to the other person. So what do I want? A building. Or what do I want you to do is to maybe represent me in this case. So we sign a contract. So at the end of it, you either get the benefit and I also get the benefit. So it has to be in the fact that, as you say, I do my part, you do your part. So both parties must have legal and mental capacity to enter into that contract. And sometimes when you are told, if you sign a contract, when somebody is not well upstairs, then it can be null and void. And one party cannot force the other party to sign a contract. So, and the consideration offered is legal. So you realize there's a lot of the law and issue of your part, my part. If no part, then we go separate way. So it can be invalidated in case, as we say, one party or both parties violates it, and then when we realize that it is built on that premise that if it's not working, then we dissolve it. We call it quits. Do you understand now? Now let's look at the covenant, so that when you be looking at the differences or what makes them different, because even though the definition we read at first, or we were given at first, somebody just concludes that it literally it's a contract. You may realize the covenant is not literally a what? A contract. So what is a covenant? A covenant is a written promise. That was a word that struck me. It's a written promise between two or more parties where the party either pledges to do something. There seems to be like a pledge and a promise. Those words came out from the covenant that were not in the contract. There is a promise. There is also the pledge. And then something else that has come out is that there has to be, in the promise, there is something like, what do you call it? An oath. Okay, the covenant is not simply a covenant. It's more like, there is also like a sign to seal the deal. Okay? So sometimes they would call it an oath. And a vow. So you're like taking a vow, you're taking an oath, and you realize the words here, you don't find in contract that I promise to construct a building. It is you are the one, it's like definite. You're doing it. If you don't do it, that's the end. There is the promise. Here, there is a pledge, and there is the oath. So when we talk about the written promise between two or more parties, where the party either pledges to do something or refrains from doing something, a covenant is a type of contract. Though in this, the people making the promise or the what you call the covenanters is the person who is benefiting from the promise, all of them pledge to be faithful on their part. Okay? And their faithfulness does not seem to depend on the other. You realize that in a contract is I do, you also do. Okay? In a covenant is I take my pledge that I'm going to do my part. But that does not depend. We say it is mutually exclusive. I'll be faithful to you. I promise that I'll love you. You know, there are those vows we took in sickness and in health. And that does not say you do it and I do it. Now, I hope that I am not saying only for myself. I don't know how many you said, I'll love you as long as you love me. Anyone who said like that? Or I'm going to take care of you as long as you? Each one of us took their own vow. Many even write for themselves and say, I pledge I'll take you this as my, wedded life and all that, to love and to hold and all that, what you said. I don't know whether you remember. I can see George is smiling. I don't know what you said. Would you want to repeat it or you forgot? I know you do more than what you vowed, yeah? But you realize that the vows that we took makes the marriage different from just being a covenant, because we never told the other person, sign here, you're going to commit to do this as I do the other. And when you don't do it, we are going to have it null and void. You keep your part. The same as God does his promise. He says, if we become, he's faithful, but if we became faithless, he does not change, because he cannot deny himself. Let every man be a liar, but God be true. God will not be a liar because you are a liar. And I believe that's what he expects us in our relationship. That our covenant is not simply just because we are getting the benefits. We can keep the part of our bargain. So a covenant is that promise which we make between one another as we vow to do something or we do to the other person. So maybe can you be able to pick out some differences?
I think one major difference that I've picked between the two is that aspect of the obligations being mutually exclusive. In contract is always that I'm doing this because you're doing this, and that's why there's even a consideration. I'm building this house for you because you are paying me this money. But for covenant, the obligations are mutually exclusive. If it's a marriage covenant, I will love my wife not because she's loving me. It's because it is my exclusive obligation to love her.
To love.
Yeah, so that's a major difference I've picked out.
Thank you. And that more like concludes what we have for today, because I believe the next thing is now when we come to the final conclusion, as we look at the different covenants that God made with his people, and even other covenants are in the Bible, what really, affected or what made them to be fulfilled, because that also helps us to come to any conclusion, what is our marriage covenant? And once we understand, you realize, we will find ourselves thriving in our marriages. And you realize that the purposes of God will be fulfilled as he intended, because we are doing each our parts. Yes, any other? Do you have any question within the class? I mean, from what we have learned today? Can see you're really contemplating, maybe something you have just wondered, no, what did I say that day? Did I mean it? Maybe something. Yes.
I think I've had quite a number of concerns on the origin of marriage covenant, the seal being the ring. Yeah, how did it come about? Who say that it has to be a ring? Because of course we're also aware that there are some churches who opted now, no, for example, the seventh day, they don't do the ring. So why do you think Christians or some of the religions that do the ring opted for that particular symbol to seal the marriage covenant?
A good question that needs some discussion. And that gives you some assignment.
Sure.
You see, we are learning, okay?
But can I attempt to just give my 2 cents on it? If we are looking at it from a biblical angle, and I want to believe I've read the Bible enough, I've never seen a place where we are being given a description on how a wedding should be done. That these are the requirements of a Christian wedding, that there must be a white gown, there must be a cake, there must be a page boys. I want to think the issue of a ring is just symbolical to show that this is how this covenant is being sealed. But it is not written, cast in stone, that it must be there.
Okay.
These things that we are calling white weddings, they are things that just came with... people wanted to spice up the ceremony. So it is just a way of, a symbolical way of showing this is how we are sealing the wedding or the marriage. But it's not a biblical or a scriptural requirement.
And when people talk about that in pingu ya maisha,
Pingu ya maisha.
hii ni pingu tulijifuga. And God kept the key. Anyway, that's very good, and you can continue discussing that, and I believe that you get much more. Thank you so much. See you next time, and we will learn more on the covenant. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Proverbs 18 verse 22. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. In today's discussion during the break,
Rather, I've heard a statement that if you love your wife, she'll be able to submit.
How to?
If you love your wife, she'll be able to submit. Now, borrowing from that context that we have heard, how is that supposed to apply? So does it mean that if she's not loved, then submission thing is now out of the equation?
I won't lie. I've responded to that concern several times, because one of the things I always feel, and I always responded out of practicality.
Yes.
I realize everything that God puts in place, he has a reason, and he knows that's the best way it works. Everything. By the time he was telling a man to love and telling the woman to submit, of course, he also knew that there's a high chance, and that's why it's a covenant, one of them will fail on his part. So that when it fails, please don't stop on your part. Because he failed to submit, don't stop loving, and because if he did not love you, don't stop submitting. But he knew if every party to that covenant is able to play their role, then everything in the marriage will just fall into place. So unfortunately, as what we are learning, the instances when a party will fail to do their part, and since they are covenant, and since they're independent, that's why now you are told as a Christian, you cannot stop what you have been told to do. You just continue doing what you have. But I agree. If ukipenda, alafu nikisubmit, kila kitu will be okay. That's my position. I don't know if...
Yeah, I think it is true. What I'm understanding you're saying is that if the woman is the one who's being asked to submit and the man to love, and they're supposed to do it regardless of whether, if it's the woman, regardless of whether the man is loving. But what I'm also getting from her is that if the man loves and if the woman submits, it makes it easier for the parties in the covenant to do their roles. As in, if my wife submits, it is easier for my love to be expressed. But my love should not be pegged on that submission. As in, because atiana amekata kusubmit sasa sitampenda. And I'm looking at it even in terms of even God himself. Whenever he was making covenant with the children in Israel, for example, when he said he will give them the promised land, before he delivered this promised land, Wana-Israeli walikuwa wanasumbua, wanamuasi. So sometimes God keeps them huko wilderness. He'll still keep his part of the covenant, but they were kind of trying to make it hard for him to fulfill. But he still kept his covenant. And I think even in marriage, it should be that way. If all of us keep part of our covenant, it becomes very easy to enjoy the marriage. But if one party is not keeping, it does not mean now you break the covenant.
But the biggest issue now has always been this. Demystifying or breaking down into what pertains to love and what pertains to submission. A man will come and say today, I have not changed my mind. The day I will change my mind, I'll say, for as long as I've not said, you are the same. And then now our sisters here to the market, tukisema hapana, mimi nataka asubuhi kama dawa. 1 times 3. Asubuhi, lunchtime, dinner, and if possible, increase even the doses. So perhaps we want to understand, do you think when God said love, we perhaps fail to do it because we don't understand what it means, and when said to submit? My take is we complicate things for nothing. Love is love. What does love entail? Just, saying something good to me, buying a flower, being just kind, serve me, and, nilishe kakijiko, just whatever entails to love, that is love. What is submit? Submitting is submitting. Okay, when I say submitting is submitting, for as long as the other party does not feel like he's not the head, he's not taking the lead. Because I'm always believing anytime in a teamwork, kuna a team leader, and you as the team members, you're allowed to express your position, but there are instances the team leader's decision will have to take precedent because we can not all give directions. So that you'll be, at the attempts will not agree, but you will say your position, but now the team leader's position takes precedent. For me now, those are some of the understanding of now what love is and what submission is, unless anyone else will have a different position or something to add.
Pegging it on just what we've discussed. When when the scriptures say to the man, you're supposed to love your wife, and the way Christ loved the church, it is an unconditional love. Whether the church is doing this or that, whatever, Christ loved it unconditionally. So I like what you brought out, that no matter if she doesn't submit or whatever she does, I have the obligation. God has given me the task to love. Regardless of whatever thing that she does, it is supposed to come out that I'm not pegging it on what she has done. Today she has been so good, whatever, or rather this season she has been so good, that's why I'm loving her. No, it's regardless of whatever she does, whatever she is, whatever, anything that happens, it is as Christ loved the church. And that's, I think, it is, sometimes I say it is much more than even the submission we talk about. It is much more than the submission that we talk about. Yeah.
And I think maybe one of the things we'll probably ask our teacher in the next class, now that she has taken us through contracts and covenants, is what is the place of this new type of marriages where you sign a prenuptial agreement before you get into the marriage. You sign and you define your obligations. What is the place in our contemporary Christian life? Maybe we'll want to see what the teacher will say on that. Yes.
And the other concern is also on some of the ways of performing this covenant. You know, church wedding versus a big garden wedding. Yeah, the issue of sealing the ring. I think I'd asked in the other class. Yeah, during the class time, sealing the covenant with a ring. So since we were told that it is possible, as there's nowhere in the biblical, we just adopt it as a way of symbol. So then that means that there's a time I can decide we are sealing it with a watch. I can decide we are sealing it with a handkerchief. Does it mean then it is possible? So that we don't have to always just do what the rest are saying, for as long as it's in line with the Bible. Yes. We may want to think about it. Yeah.
Good foods for thought.
Yeah.
To get the notes of today's lesson, visit www.mbcimedia.com/The Marriage Classroom. Catch the repeat of The Marriage Classroom every Tuesday at 10 p.m.